Welcome in to the Cover 5 show. Usually we are pre-recording, but this one is a special show because we are live over on YouTube, my Twitter. Be sure to comment, be sure to hit that like button, subscribe to the 33rd Team Fantasy and Betting channel. Just did a player prop happy hour that you should go check out where they're going to crush some bets this weekend, but we are going to be taking our talents to the DFS street. As always, I'm joined by my co-host at HiloFF over on X. How are you doing today, Hilo?
Good, dude. We can call it Twitter. I mean, we're all friends here.
It's tough to say. I have to like remind myself, but you can find me over there at Jordan Vanek DFS. Let's get into it, Hilo. This show is a 5-game, breaking down 5 games from a DFS perspective. We've got 2 games from each of us that we handpicked, and the chalk game of the week, which is going to be that Kansas City and Minnesota matchup. But to kick it off to you, Hilo, first game of the week, we got the Eagles taking on the Rams. Tell me what you like about this one.
Dude, there's all kinds of things to like about this one. I think it's interesting, and I think we should start with this discussion with the defensive side of the ball. I think we have a Philadelphia Eagles team who is running above average rates of man coverage, or top 10 in the league in that category. And we also have we have to like think about third layer here because we have so many moving pieces with the Rams right now. Cooper Kupp is now, as of 2 hours ago, going to play for the first time. We know that Puka Nacua has been kind of filling in that zone beater type schemed usage role, intermediate area role. We know that Cooper Kupp had done a lot of that, a lot of those same principles over the previous 2 seasons. But Cooper Kupp is like the everything beater. He's capable of beating press. He's capable of beating man, zone, all the things. But the most interesting piece, I think, to me from the Rams in how it aligns with the defensive tendencies of Philadelphia is Tutu Atwell, who has primarily been utilized as the motion man and as the kind of man beater because of his speed and his lateral quickness and kind of being able to win within the first 5 yards of the line of scrimmage. So when I'm trying to piece together those defensive tendencies from Philadelphia and how that aligns with what we expect from the Rams, it's probably Tutu who is least affected in this offense by the return of Cooper Kupp. We've talked about this in the past. He's kind of being utilized in that Deebo Samuel role from Kyle Shanahan's offense. Similar short area role, we'll just put it like that, to Tyreek Hill in Miami. Obviously, Tyreek Hill's route tree is robust and is not like confined to our standard 1 through 9 routes. But Tutu is running a lot of the things that we see Tyreek Hill do pre-snap, and then as far as like the short to intermediate areas of the field. So he's very interesting. And then the flip side of that is we have a Rams defense who is confusing opposing quarterbacks this year and being very effective at it via their too high shell and these varied zone concepts that they're using. And when we get the Eagles in a matchup where it's against an opponent that runs a lot of man coverage, their man beater is just AJ Brown. They're going to feed him the ball. We saw it last week. In zone or against zone, it kind of introduces a lot of uncertainties because that offense is so dynamic that they can just scheme up these weird things, and we don't know who it's going to be going into the week. It could be AJ Brown. It could be Devontae Smith. It could be DeAndre Swift, who has kind of asserted his presence, made his presence known, and kind of usurped the former Kenneth Gainwell as the lead back. So there's a lot of interesting aspects. Basically, for me, Philadelphia, it's everybody but Dallas Goedert, who has a short area ADOT, who does not have a robust red zone role. But any of those other 3 primary guys, and then add on Jalen Hurts, set up really well in this spot to exploit the zone tendencies of the Rams. So all those things kind of come together. They give us a really wide range of outcomes in this particular game environment with a lot of usable pieces, I think.
Yeah, for the Eagle side of the ball, at least for me, I actually think this sets up well for AJ Brown, just because when you think about the corner or receivers that have beaten this Rams defense, that have kind of got past that confusion type situation, Deebo Samuel, Jamar Chase, DK Metcalf. Those are the 3 receivers that won in this particular matchup. Obviously, DK Metcalf didn't win to the extent that he should have, but that was kind of the product of the tackles getting hurt in that game, Seattle not running a ton of plays and not being able to take advantage of some of these situations. But for the Eagles, when you look at cover 3, cover 4, which again, it's the too high shell, but I'm expecting Eagles to be winning in this game. So that's when the Rams will probably be playing a lot more cover 3 to bring it down to try to stop Swift. AJ Brown's target share in those two coverages, 37%. His yards per route run, 2.3. So for me, it's kind of AJ Brown, bigger bodied receivers, how I want to beat this team, and being able to just kind of catch that curl route in the soft shell and continue going. And that's where AJ Brown kind of eats. So AJ Brown's kind of in the way that I'm playing the Eagle side. With Cooper Kupp back, you nailed it on the head with the idea that I kind of have where Cooper Kupp's an everything beater. I'm not really concerned about what he takes away from either of these guys. And in this particular, I think it's matchup based, where this one is a matchup where you're going to see a lot more man coverage. Also, I think the Eagles are going to come after Puka. I think that if out of the 3 receivers, he's probably going to be the least in motion. So he's going to be the guy that's kind of lines up and is there. And now James Bradbury's been playing the slot, weirdly enough. It's kind of like, okay, so you can't really put Puka there. Then you have Josh Jobe, who does get beat, but the safety is going to help over the top, and he's a physical press corner. So it's a situation where Puka's not going to thrive there. And then Darius Slay, I don't think Puka's winning in that one. So for me, I think it eliminates Puka from my player pool, but Cooper Kupp just off of his name has to be there. I know it's a scary situation, but he just needs to be a part of it. And then Tutu Atwell is the player that I've been most intrigued with just because he's the man beater. He's the guy that runs away from these coverages. And if he gets one-on-one with Josh Jobe, Stafford's just going to throw it off the line of scrimmage. The only concern I have, how much time is he going to have? The Eagles' defensive line is menacing. Jalen Carter is playing like he's a top 5 defensive tackle in the NFL. And with that, Stafford had that hip injury in the game. He's going to play through it unless he literally can't walk. But there's a chance that in this one, he might not end up being able to walk out of this matchup. Any concern for that or thoughts on that one?
I don't think so. I think that's probably mitigated by Sean McVay and his offensive scheme coming into it. And also on the discussion of Matthew Stafford, he's been hovering around the 300 yards passing mark in all 4 games. And he has had extreme negative touchdown variance, which has been primarily introduced via the heavy red zone rush rates, which has benefited Kyron Williams. Against a Philadelphia team that has allowed 1 rushing score this season, an extreme pass funnel matchup in that. Now we have this opportunity to see potentially some positive touchdown regression for Stafford. So I love him this week as well. And he's priced low, like 5.6, 5.7, something like that. I think it opens up a lot to be able to play around with a Matthew Stafford to Tutu Atwell mini here.
I also like Tyler Higbee in this matchup. I believe he's back or continuing to play through obviously some bumps and bruises there, but the Eagles don't defend tight ends. Obviously now Cooper Kupp's back, so it's like obviously we're paying attention to him, we're paying attention to Puka, we're paying attention to Tutu. Opens the door for Higbee to kind of just be the guy out there and catch some passes. The Eagles linebacking the safety group is the worst part of their defense. I think that's kind of the way you get it out quickly and also protect Stafford just a little bit. So Stafford stacks with Higbee, and then obviously Tutu or Kupp is kind of the way that I would play him. Any other thoughts for this game?
Yeah, I haven't decided on Higbee just yet because McVay has been very upfront with the fact that when they feel like they need an extra body along the offensive line, they're just going to hold him in and drop his route rate. So that's my biggest concern. But I could see if they're behind him, sending him out on routes at an increased rate.
That's fair. I didn't think of it from that point of view. So, but all right, let's move on to the next game. It's a game that I chose. It's a game that I did not think I was going to be choosing this week, but the Jets are taking on the Broncos. This game's got a 43.5 point over under. This is not a game I want to stack in the quarterback room because I don't think this is a good matchup for Russell Wilson. And I'm just never going to be stacking Zach Wilson.
Live a little, dude.
Even the way he's played well. He played well in that second half against the Kansas City Chiefs. Can't really knock the kid for that. I'm not going to sit here and try to bash him, but he's just not where I'm going to be going for DFS. But I am going to be going to Breece Hall. Obviously, they came out and said that he's not going to be in the snap count anymore, which is huge news for him because he had been trending upward each week and now had the highest snap share last weekend. And then you just look at the running backs versus the Denver Broncos. Achane, 54. Mostert in the same game, 45. Brian Robinson, 29. Khalil Herbert, 25. And then Josh Jacobs, who had the worst performance of the group, he had 9. But he has openly said he hasn't kind of gotten that rhythm with that offensive line yet. And he hasn't ran well against any team up to this point. Or this last week was the first week where he actually ran well with Aiden O'Connell against the Chargers. But overall, he had openly talked about the time off has kind of hurt him. So for me, Breece Hall in this matchup is the way I want to go, and I want to mini stack him. I want to be bringing back Courtland Sutton just because of the injuries on the cornerback room of the New York Jets. You don't have DJ Reed. You don't have another corner. I slipping his name right now, but he doesn't play that much anyways. So Sauce Gardner only plays one side of the field. That side of the field is not where Courtland Sutton lines up most. He is on the opposite side of the field. We know they're going to be playing a lot more zone than they do man coverage in New York for the Jets. So this is a spot for me where Courtland Sutton is going to be the guy for Russell Wilson, avoiding Judy. I would love to play Marvin Mims, but Sean Payton refuses to make him a play just because of... Don't know why. I don't know. Every time he gets the ball, he does good things. Even last week, it felt like, 2 targets, 60 yards, 50 yards? Some nonsense.
Yeah, he got a 54-yarder or something like that.
Just so frustrating to watch. But overall, how do you feel about this game? Are you playing it at all? What's your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I think you can play it. So Breece Hall is not going to go overlooked on this slate, and it's for good reasons. Although there is the potential uncertainty with his workload. Yes, and if you looked around the industry, we kind of got the idea that Robert Saleh's words were kind of taken out of context a little bit when he said no. Like, he didn't come out and say no more snap count for Breece Hall. He kind of just said, like, we'll be looking to get him more involved, something along those lines. So a news aggregator that shall not be named kind of wrote a headline saying, oh, the wheels are off for Breece Hall. No more training wheels, no more snap count. That's not exactly what was said. So that's the first thing. But the second thing is, like, it's a great matchup. And if he's going to see more than 9-10 touches that he has been seeing over the first 4 games of the season, he's going to wreck this spot. Over 6 yards per carry. Like, everything else is Gucci. We're just waiting on that snap rate to increase. And the field is getting smarter to the fact that we don't have to wait and see it before we play these players. So he'll probably be, he'll have some interest from the field. So to me, while I still want to be exposed there, I want to have exposure, I'm trying to think of how I can do that smartly. And the first way I came up with is to play like the 2 players on the Jets where we expect volume to go to, and that's Garrett Wilson and Breece Hall. Then I was like, well, their quarterback is 4.9. Like, I don't know, man. What does he need to do to be in the GPP viable discussion? It was like, he probably needs to throw for 250 to 270, but he needs 3 touchdowns regardless. And I was like, can Zach Wilson provide 3 touchdowns in some form or fashion? All passing, 2 passing, 1 rushing. Maybe, I don't know. Like, this is, if there's any spot in the history of the world of football that he's going to do it, this is it. So I think that I'm going to have some, and I'll preface this discussion with, I'm normally a single entry 3 max guy. I'm actually going MME this week because I think the general consensus from the field that this slate is gross. It's ugly. So the leverage is off the charts. So I'm going to try and lean into this a little bit and go MME. So in MME, I will probably have Zach Wilson, Garrett Wilson, Breece Hall stacks. You don't need a bring back. If you don't want, you can, you do. That combination of 3 players needs to average about 21.7 fantasy points per player to put you on a 4x multiplier pace. So about 200 points. For GPPs this week, we're probably going to see 230, 240, if I had to guess, is going to be the shipping score. So you need about between a 4x, 5x multiplier from your primary stack if we're kind of dumbing things down, not dumbing things, but simplifying things as much as possible. If they are on a 5x pace, that's 27 points per player. So that's a little bit of a reach. But I think somewhere in that 4 to 5x of that 3-player block in this particular spot, with so much of their offense running through Breece Hall and Garrett Wilson, I think is on the table. So I'll have some exposure that way. I'm not going to be running Breece Hall naked because I think that that's going to be the most common way that he's going to be employed. So just looking for interesting ways to kind of play him, but play him smartly.
This is the first week you didn't recommend Marvin Mims. This is good.
He'll be in there too, dude. So I can't. I'm not going to talk about him because now he'll hit, but I'm going to be playing him. So
I just wish Sean Payton would play him because we've been banging on the door like let's be ahead of the curve, and it's not. And at the end of the day, it's just a little tough. But let's kick it to our next game. It had an overcast today, so we're not going to be too hot for you to avoid it. The Giants are taking on the Dolphins. The Dolphins have moved from like 9-point spread to a 12.5-point spread some sites, which is insane. I know this is our main man, Wink Martindale. He said he's sleeping like a baby, as in he's getting 2 hours of sleep, waking up, peeing, and then crying himself back to sleep. So I think this is kind of how I'm thinking he's thinking, and it's not a good not a good matchup for this Giants team. They're missing a ton of players. Hilo, how are you playing this game?
Full on onslaught, any and every player. But I think, again, like we did with the Philly and the Rams game, I think we need to look at like what to expect from Wink Martindale first. Is he going to continue with a almost 50% blitz rate against the the Miami football? Oh my God, Dolphins.
Yes.
And is he going to leave his players in man coverage behind
that?
If that answer is yes, we don't even need to go to Jalen Waddle. We can X him off, because the way that I like to relay this or think about this is Tyreek Hill is the Lamborghini in the garage. You have Jalen Waddle. He's a Porsche. He's fast. He's great. He's awesome. But you have Tyreek Hill, who's the Lamborghini. You have 2 Ferraris in Devon Achane and Raheem Mostert. Why would I go take out the Porsche when I got the Lamborghini and the Ferraris in the kitchen there? Against man coverage, Tyreek Hill is unguardable. He's almost unguardable against anything, but specifically against man coverage, look out. And if Wink is just gonna leave his guys, send the house, leave his guys behind, Mike McDaniel is just going to get the ball out of Tua's hand because he's a smart offensive play caller. Tua's a smart quarterback. I mean, he came out of college as one of the most efficient quarterbacks over the previous 2 decades. So this combination of quarterback and coach are going to do things to beat man coverage. And that's probably going to involve a lot of outside zone run concepts through Raheem Mostert and Devon Achane and Tyreek Hill. So I think you can go as far as like Tua, Raheem Mostert, Devon Achane, and Tyreek Hill all on the same roster. Anything between that, everything is on the table. The one guy I'm kind of removing from that discussion is Jalen Waddle, who does not have, to put it lightly, the same career numbers against man coverage as a guy like Tyreek Hill.
I agree with the Jalen Waddle kind of idea, and it's also because like if you're doing this motion that they are running, Tyreek Hill's the man that gets in that type of space. The running backs are the ones that motion pretty quickly, like Achane and Mostert. Jalen Waddle doesn't get that type of love from this scheme because it's just not what he needs to do. And again, Tyreek Hill in Miami is, against cover 0, cover 1, which you're going to see a lot of. 3.7 yards per route run, over 38% target share over the last 2 seasons. This year, it's actually, they haven't seen that a lot this year.
Yeah.
So it hasn't been that high because nobody's going to do it.
No one is Wink.
No, but Wink's going to come in and do it. And the weird thing about Tua over the last 2 years against it, his completion rate is like 59%. Mm-hmm. That's something I did not expect to see. But then I think about like the way that Tua operates, and sometimes that pressure kind of gets to him. So I'd be monitoring what Connor Williams is up to. If Connor Williams does not play, I am probably avoiding this one just because Leon Etchenberg would be their center, and he is awful. He is like Mike McDaniel did not trust the entire offense line against Buffalo. because of that swap from Connor Williams to Leon Etchenberg. They did not run their normal scheme whatsoever. It was a lot of bubble screens. It was a lot of quick passing. Like, yeah, that's good. But Buffalo was telling you, hey, we're taking away the quick pass. You better beat us deep. And anytime they try to take a deep shot, Tua was pressured, Tua was hit. Ball was either fumbling or he was checking it down to the running back quickly, and then the running back was fumbling. So it's a weird spot. Achane had a lot of work in the first half, and they had a lot of work together. Achane had 57% of the offensive snaps in the first half. Mostert, 61%. So for me, Achane's close to a 50-50 split with this guy. And on top of it, he's already playing with him on the field. And Achane had all of the goal line this past weekend. Obviously, they could both do it. It's just probably a product of Mostert being a little tired and Achane just being the guy they wanted to give the ball to in this one. So Giants run defense has not tackled well whatsoever. So definitely love the running backs in this matchup. And on the flip side, do you have any interest on any of these Giants players? Because I don't care.
I think there's one we got to talk about, but before we get there, the New York Football Giants have allowed the most yards before contact in the league this year at 1.8. So the state of that's a lot of yards before contact. that's a lot.
That's not good.
The next closest team is the Cincinnati Bengals at 1.63, and now you're down. Every other team is 1.5 and below. So that is a lot of yards before contact. Now you get Devon Achane and Raheem Mostert, who are both around the 4.3 40 time. And you get that with a full head of steam on an outside zone pulling guard run blocking scheme. It could get ugly fast. The one thing that I think we need to be thinking about is, do we need a bring back in this type of game environment? And I don't think are you looking at the Detroit Lions news?
No, Randy Gregory just got traded to the 49ers.
Oh, jeez.
That's a disgusting pass rush. Oh, my God.
Yeah, that's so sick.
Oh, that's gross. But we can continue. Sorry.
I saw the Lions news.
Yeah.
Rusty Brown doubtful. Jameer Gibbs questionable with a late.
That's why I didn't put that game on the sheet, to be honest.
Oh, dude, just play DMO and move on. Anyway, so yeah. I don't think you need a bring back in this spot. If you want to, I think Wan'Dale is probably the most optimal option. He's priced at bare minimum at $3K. DK did nothing to move his price. He saw almost 60% or about 60% snap rate last week. And we know that he is kind of the schemed usage guy in this offense. Also, guys like Darius Slayton, guys like that are holdovers from the previous scheme before Dabble got there, are not, I don't think, trusted as much as a guy like Wan'Dale Robinson, who was Brian Dable's second round pick last year. So he's kind of the schemed usage guy in this offense. We should expect them to have to be throwing a lot. Saquon Barkley is going to be back to keep the linebackers honest. I think maybe, we don't know yet. But Wan'Dale's a guy that I think if you want to go somewhere here, is probably the most optimal. I could see the field trying to take shots on Darren Waller. That ain't me this week. You can, I think, just because tight end is pretty gross still. But yeah, I think you don't need a bring back. We saw it with Denver or against Denver. They are more than happy just to continue running their offense to try and get better. They're coming off of an ugly loss to the Bills where they scored only 20 points. And so there's a lot to like about this offense this week.
And I mean, obviously the Miami Dolphins will crush them. The Giants do not exactly have the pieces on the O-line to protect Daniel Jones. Watching that game against the Seahawks was pretty embarrassing because their pass rush isn't good, and Miami's hasn't been well this year. This is a perfect game to get started as a pass rush in this one and figure out what they want to do from a scheme perspective. Not moving Xavier Howard to Diggs this side of the field was an issue that Nick Fangio did not adjust to whatsoever. So this is a spot where they can kind of get right as a defense. And I think the concept for Vic was kind of looking at it like, well, when we get Jalen Ramsey, we could do this. He thought he could do it with Kader Kohou. Kader Kohou was not able to cover Diggs. This is a matchup where they don't have Diggs or Josh Allen out there. And this is one where Wan'Dale Robinson at 3K is a fine player to play. I just don't see, I see 8 points, 9.
Yeah.
That's good. That's good value. It's just not the upside that you want in your lineup. I think there's ways to get up to that 5K range and some other guys. But let's move forward to the next game we're going to talk about, the Tennessee Titans against the Indianapolis Colts. It's a weird game, but I think this is a game where the total is too low, in my opinion. I think this game is going to be a little bit more scoring than what is expected. And the way I'm treating this is simple. For Anthony Richardson, if you're playing him, I am not going to recommend him naked this weekend. I think you should be playing him with one of Pittman or Pierce. We know the Tennessee Titans are a defense that will give up big plays down the field to receivers. They've done it every single year since Vrabel's been there. And this is a spot where running quarterbacks hit their ceiling in DFS when they are good passers. Not great passers, good passers. We see it with Justin Fields and DJ Moore right now. Justin Fields is finally good in fantasy. DJ Moore is crushing it right now. That is how that operates in this matchup against the Tennessee Titans. We know the Titans' MO and how they're going to kind of play the Colts because we've seen the Titans coach against Shane Steichen. What did they do against A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith? They let them play single high coverage. They did not let Jalen Hurts run the ball. This is another spot. They're not going to let Anthony Richardson run, but Anthony Richardson can still get goal line touchdowns, which is his path to having that absolute ceiling. And Pierce and Pittman are two guys that can beat this Tennessee Titans secondary. I know Alec Pierce has not been good this year, but he's running over 90% of the routes every single week. We know he's running down the field. And this is the first spot where I feel like they can actually hit over the top of this defense. So I like pairing Anthony Richardson with Alec Pierce to get to that spot. And then I want the game environment to explode. So I'm playing Derrick Henry and I will be playing DeAndre Hopkins. This is a very centralized attack with the Tennessee Titans. These two guys are the pathway for the ceiling of Anthony Richardson with the other guys. DeAndre Hopkins against cover 3 has a 38% target share this year. Like the Indianapolis Colts with Gus Bradley, that's pretty much the coverage they run. I know other sites are kind of marking some of these coverages cover 4 or cover 2 or cover 1. It's a lot of cover 3, and it's repetitive, and it kind of makes you think like, it's like picking the same letter choice. Like I had a teacher that did that to me once. She made every single answer B, just to kind of psych you out. And it's like, yeah, actually, I feel like that's kind of the way that the Colts are playing, where it looks like it's somewhat different, but it's still responsibilities there. So you have DeAndre Hopkins. He's not getting a ton of volume because they're not passing a ton, but this is a spot maybe the game environment creates that, and DeAndre Hopkins can beat these Colts corners with ease. I don't care that he's a little bit slower. Their boundary corners are awful. Then Derrick Henry, last year against Gus Bradley, against the better Colts defense, in my opinion. Both games over 100 yards, and the Titans are getting two pieces back to their offensive line that they have not had in first-round pick Peter Skoronsky and another guy that I can't remember his name. So Titans O-line is getting healthier, which isn't a great O-line, but it's a better one. Colts defense line isn't exactly a world beater. They were able to take advantage of the backup Ravens offense line, but in this game, that's how I'm going to play it with Anthony Richardson. I'm going to get him, Pierce, and then play Derrick Henry with DeAndre Hopkins. I also think the slate for running backs is relatively weak. Derrick Henry is not getting as much love as I think. It's a little bit spread right now, but I think this is a great spot for him to be the absolute best running back. And last weekend, he looked like Derrick Henry once again. Hi, Lower. How do you feel about this one?
I couldn't have broke it down any better, man. To be honest, that was pretty in line with my thoughts here. The thing about
Tannehill or no?
No.
Okay.
The thing about Mike Vrabel in Tennessee is he tailors his defense to always take away the run, and then there's always one plus. It's take away the run plus something, and typically that changes based on the opponent. When he has played mobile quarterbacks, as you just alluded to and talked about, that plus has become spy and contain on the mobile quarterback. So what does that do? That it eats up basically in the mind and of the eyes and the positioning of two of the linebackers, which they know they're already going to be in the box because that's just what Vrabel does. But now they're playing a more like spy mentality. So that's the aspect of this game that is most interesting, is we should be expecting some heavy rates of soft zone behind that second unit in the linebacking core. And when you get a guy like Alec Pierce, who has a 17.7 ADOT, which is 5th or 6th deepest in the league right now, and you get a volume receiver in Michael Pittman, who has seen double-digit targets in 3 out of 4 games this year, those two are very, very interesting. The Tennessee side of the ball, yeah, it's only Derrick Henry. The biggest thing with Derrick Henry is not the matchup. I think the fantasy community has gotten this wrong for the past 3 years. The thing with Derrick Henry is not the matchup. The thing with Derrick Henry is you play him when you expect the game to be close throughout, because that's when he's always going to have a path to 30 plus touches. And Derrick Henry with 30 plus touches is going to wear a defense down. And it doesn't matter who he's playing. And that's when you start seeing these. I mean, look at his career like splits from September to October to November to December. Well, look at his career splits: first quarter, second quarter, third quarter, fourth quarter. And where he's wearing teams down in the fourth quarter are the games where he's seeing 25 to 30 carries. And he sees 6+ yards per carry in that time window. So yeah, if this game remains close, which it is likely to do because the Colts are not pushing the ball downfield, they're taking a more march the field mentality. I don't know if that is Shane Steichen like simplifying things for his offense and his rookie quarterback. But right now it appears that he's making that offense as simple as possible, giving him a lot of first, second reads and making things as easy to process as possible. At some point this season, that might change. We might see the cannon arm come out. The guns are going to come out at some point, I think. But right now, it's more of we're going to march the field and play this kind of ball control. We have to string together a drive. So all that discussion comes into this game is highly likely to play close throughout, which, again, Derrick Henry has paths to 25, 30 touches here.
And also, Jonathan Taylor, a player that will help out. Again, Vrabel won't be wrong to take away the run game of the Colts when JT's back there. It seems like all is well on that side of the ball, and hopefully he finds his way to a contract extension with this team, because I think obviously Irsay is one side of the equation here, but Steichen and Anthony Richardson want Jonathan Taylor on this roster. They've made Zach Moss a viable fantasy asset. I am so excited to see Jonathan Taylor in this offense. It'll be one to watch in the run game. Good luck to Vrabel stopping it. As a DFS person, I'm hoping he stops it just enough for Alec Pierce to get it done down the field. I hope he overcommits to that run game. But let's move forward to the last game we are going to talk about before we get into our slate breakers and favorite values on the slate. Kansas City Chiefs are taking on the Minnesota Vikings. Obviously, this is a dome game. This is a game where Brian Flores exists, and he is going to blitz Patrick Mahomes, which Patrick Mahomes hasn't had. It just doesn't happen for him. Brian Flores has played Patrick Mahomes twice. It was with the New England Patriots, and it was with the Miami Dolphins. Mahomes, over 300 yards in both of those appearances. Weirdly enough, in both games, a running back has also had over 50 receiving yards. It was Clyde Edwards-Helaire when they played in Miami. It was Kareem Hunt having 110 yards when they played New England. This is where my way of stacking Patrick Mahomes is going to come in, where I will probably be playing Mahomes with a running back in Travis Kelce instead of trying to navigate that receiver position, because it's just a rotation. I think personally, Rashee Rice is my favorite one because he played as much as Sky Moore this past weekend. But for the love of God, I have no idea what they're doing. I think I'm going to keep it kind of simple in that regard. And then for my take on the flip side of here, the Minnesota Vikings get Garrett Bradbury, which is going to help a lot because obviously Chris Jones is menacing. So they're not going to have hopefully as much pressure in the interior as they have had throughout the season. Chiefs live in too high. They love man cover 2. They love zone cover 2. They love playing cover 2. They love blitzing out of it and giving these zone style of blitzes. That's where TJ Hawkinson eats and thrives. I know he's a gross price right now. I never recommend something like this, but I think it's a viable option to play 2 tight ends if you really want to get into this game. I know. Yep. Yeah. Ilo's not doing it at all. But I think this is a game where TJ Hawkins can see the ceiling and carry that game environment. Obviously, Jay Jettas is totally fine. Not going to sit here and say he's a bad play. Definitely not going to sit here and say that Jordan Addison isn't viable. I'm not touching Alexander Madison or Cam Akers, and I'm definitely not touching KJ Osborne. I will only be looking at the Minnesota side from TJ Hawkinson and Justin Jefferson. And from the Mahomes side, I will be playing him with a running back and Travis Kelce. Hilo, how are you attacking this main slate game?
The running back situation in Kansas City is very interesting because the offensive line defensive line mismatch is basically what it amounts to is a 40% boost to expected rushing production in this spot, and those are via a competitor. Um, the other interesting thing is Jordan Addison is about a sub 60 route participation rate in close game environments when the team can run increased rates of 12 personnel and play things, like they did last week against Carolina. When in neutral to positive or neutral to negative game environments, Jordan Addison's route participation rate is up at 85%. So the team clearly shifts to more 11 personnel when playing from behind. And if Jordan Addison is on the field, we expect them to be more or less in negative game environments throughout here. If he is in a route 85, 90% in this spot against the heavy zone concepts where they're likely going to be paying a little bit extra attention to Justin Jefferson on the perimeter, he's set up where he can see 9-10 targets, put up 8 receptions for 100 yards, 1 or 2 scores. That is within his range of outcomes in this spot. And I think that the field is probably going to largely overlook that because he had a game last week with 0 targets or 0 receptions. So yeah, he's super interesting. I love the mini correlation aspect of this game, going something like Isaiah Pacheco and Jordan Addison. And if you're playing Travis Kelce, well, I'll just say this for one last time, or I'll probably bring it up every time we talk about him. If you're playing Travis Kelce in this current iteration of this offense, in his current role, he is going to need multiple touchdowns in order to return value for GPPs. If he's doing that, theoretically, we should always be playing Travis Kelce with Patrick Mahomes. So you can do that Travis Kelce, Patrick Mahomes running back. You can try and get the right wide receiver right, but no wide receiver played more than 61% of the offensive snaps last week. So good luck with that, I guess. Go play Justin Watson. He led the team in snap rate. I don't know. I don't do that. I'm not doing that. But yeah, so I think my favorite way of attacking this game environment is with a mini correlation, and primarily with Isaiah Pacheco and Jordan Addison.
Yeah, I don't mind that mini stack at all. Again, like I said, 50 receiving yards for a running back. That's McKinnon or Pacheco. It is not Clyde. I am not playing Clyde when I rephrase that. I think McKinnon and Pacheco are the two guys I would go with. Pacheco played a lot of the receiver role. I think last week was a product of Andy Reid being like, we're in New Jersey. It's this kid's home state. Like, let's get him the ball. I think it could kind of flip to a script of, it's McKinnon's former team. Let's have him score some touchdowns in this one. So I'm not a narrative guy, but I do believe that in this matchup, Andy Reid is a very, he knows he can get it done with Pacheco. It's not like he's putting someone out there that's just not good. It's just like, we can put any running back there and get it done. I think this is for me, I would be doing Mahomes, McKinnon, and Kelce. I don't mind Mahomes with Pacheco and Kelce. It's not really a great feeling playing a quarterback, running back that's in tight end, but with the way the Chiefs operate, I think it's viable. I think it's a great strategy in GPPs, but anything else you'd like to add before we go to our slate breakers?
Yeah, the final note is Pacheco is 10 receptions this year. He had 13 the entire 2022 season. And that is more than the 7 that Jerick McKinnon has. And Jerick McKinnon has been hovering around this 30% snap rate range. The last note there is that the Minnesota Vikings have allowed 1.5 yards before contact. So we just got done harping on the Giants earlier. Yeah. Minnesota is 3rd worst in the league in yards before contact allowed. The Chiefs have not blocked well from a run blocking perspective, generating only 1.15 yards before contact. Isaiah Pacheco is a guy where if he gets out in the open field with that sub 4.4 speed, he can do some chunk yardage damage here. So I think another game back-to-back over 100 yards is on the table. He has yet to do it as a professional, but here we are. And if that is the case, if he pops one in the end zone, he could be at another game with 2-3 receptions where he's approaching 30 fantasy points again. So I like him a good deal here.
That's a good way to look at it. I also think Vikings offense line, this could be the week where Bradbury's coming back, which is huge. But I also forgot to mention Dalton Reisner's now had 2 weeks in practice underneath his belt. There's a chance that he is able to get in this lineup shortly, which would significantly boost their offense line because they had Darisaw as well. So Vikings O-line would be on the rise, which may be able to increase those 11 personnel looks and neutral rate. I'm interested to see how they kind of operate when they get all of those offensive line back together so that they can actually get Jordan Addison more on the field because he is a very good player when he's out there. But let's go to our slate breakers. Hilo, who is your slate breaker this week?
My slate breaker this week is David Montgomery.
Come on.
As a guy, dude, yeah, I know. We're really going out on a limb here.
You ruined my Panthers, dog. Come on.
I'm sorry. Now we have Jahmyr Gibbs. I didn't even know this before we started this. Jahmyr Gibbs popped late on the injury report. Amon-Ra is likely out. A large spread here. I'll just put it lightly. And a likely positive game environment. And when you look at David Montgomery, he's played 2 fully healthy games. He's seen 53 carries in those 2 games and 2 targets. So that's like 26 and a half carries and a target per game. And he has averaged about 1.6 touchdowns per 4 quarters played because he has 5 in 10 quarters, which is bigly. That's a lot of the scoring. We know that Detroit's red zone rush rate is to the extreme. And we know that inside the 5-yard line, they're just like, if they get a 1st and goal from inside the 5, it's 3 consecutive rushes. That's what to expect. So yeah, I hammered David Montgomery's over rushing yards and I paired it with anytime touchdown. And I'm just going to be doubling down on that here in fantasy this week in DFS. Sorry.
So for me, the slate breaker of the week, it's a guy that he's not low rostered at all. He's going to be super chalky and it's for a good reason. It's Ja'Marr Chase. This is a game where the Arizona Cardinals run a little bit of a different scheme. They kind of mix things up. Obviously, they're frightening from people I've heard Hilo talk about it. But in this matchup, we know T. Higgins has a fractured hip. We know he might play.
That's
fractured rib.
Yeah.
And he might play with the quotation marks, just like he did with that hamstring, go out there for a snap and get pulled off the freaking field. And the Arizona Cardinals, what do they run? They run a ton of cover 4. They run a ton of cover 3. Guess who also did that? The Rams. Guess who didn't do that? The Titans. The Titans said, we're running cover 0 and cover 1 against you because we know you don't want to throw the ball more than 6 yards down the field right now because you can't plant your foot. So this is a matchup where Ja'Marr Chase is going to be utilized similar to the way that he was utilized against the Rams. I think he's kind of guaranteed 13, 15 targets in this game, especially if T. Higgins is not fully available. And then against 29%, it's just looking at it from what are his paths to failure with 15 targets. And I don't know if I want to be on the other side of that with Ja'Marr Chase. I think that the Arizona Cardinals secondary obviously has limited some guys and has done some things, but this is Ja'Marr Chase we're talking about, and he can kind of get it done. We didn't get to see Deebo Samuel play fully healthy against the Cardinals. I think if we had, he would have been more utilized in this one. So Ja'Marr Chase projected to be 30% at 7,900 over on DraftKings. He's going to get a ton of targets without T. Higgins. And in this matchup against Arizona Cardinals, I think he's going to be a guy that is very difficult to avoid. Do you have any thoughts on that one, Hilo? You're muted, buddy. Come on, the muted button.
Sorry,
so well
I was coughing, man. I think that the other avenue for success, because I could sit here and say it's highly unlikely that the Bengals fail, but that's not the case anymore with
No,
Joe Burrow.
it's very high that they fail.
Yeah. So the other interesting piece from this offense, and I guess from this game, we don't need to get into everything, but both running backs from this game, Joe Mixon, if T. Higgins is out, was probably going to see more involvement in the pass game. We know that on the other side of that, James Conner Petzing's been doing some interesting things to provide the avenue for some chunk plays on the ground, which is kind of refreshing. So both of these guys, I think, are in play. I think you can play Joe Mixon. I think you can play both running backs on the same lineup, which probably won't be done a lot. And I think I'm going to be underweight Mr. Jamar Chase, to be honest.
No, you could be underweight on him. I think what I mean by, again, obviously we have different definitions, or everybody has a different definition of slate breaker. I think as a slate breaker is someone that, like, again, he's coming in 29%. This isn't a position that doesn't have volatility. This is the most volatile position. I know tight ends get talked about it like that, but tight ends don't necessarily wreck slates. If a receiver that's 30% gets 30, it can definitely hurt a lot of the builds, especially if you go and you pivot to AJ Brown or Tyreek Hill, and they do not put up near the score that Jamar Chase who is slightly cheaper than both of those options. But moving forward, Hilo, who is your favorite value on the slate?
So I want you to go first because I'm still kind of working through mine.
Okay.
I could I don't want to make an easy call for the value guy because I did for the slate breaker here.
That's fine. I actually have kind of a game that's overlooked, and I wanted to talk about it. I think I told you I wanted to talk about it, but it didn't feel like it would make the top 2 of my games. But the Baltimore Ravens versus the Pittsburgh Steelers is a very, very interesting game because Lamar Jackson's barely ever played the Steelers. I know that he's been in the league for such a long time. I think he's played him twice.
6 years. He's played him 3 times in 6 years.
And again, this is a spot where the Pittsburgh Steelers defense, what do we know about it? Well, TJ Watt and Alex Highsmith are menacing. Cool. The Ravens are finally getting some of those pieces back on the O-line. They're getting their receivers back. And what have the Steelers not been able to do? They haven't been able to cover anybody like Nico Collins and Tank Dell and John Mechie. Like, obviously, there's a plenty of receivers. The number one receiver has usually killed them. And it's usually been on Patrick Peterson's side. Now you look at the Ravens and it's like, this is the first time that Lamar is going to play the Steelers with an offense that is passing. That's an offense that's kind of quick pace in that regard and not like play action. We're going to run around and throw the ball down the field. Zay Flowers, to me, is my favorite value because of this. I think if you're a 150 maxer right now, the way that Lamar is projected because of this Vegas total is someone that I love in 150 max type situations. He's sitting here where you can get him with Zay Flowers because, again, like I told you earlier in the show, the biggest ceiling for quarterbacks usually comes from being able to pass. We know the Steelers secondary has been awful this year. We know that Zay Flowers has been one of the top dogs in Baltimore. I think you could go, obviously, the Mark Andrews route as well. You can double stack it here. But for me, Zay Flowers at 5,500 over on DraftKings is my favorite value. Hilo, who is your favorite value?
My favorite value is Tank Dell. I was debating whether or not I wanted to move off that just because he almost feels a little too easy to call. But sorry, Tank, you're too easy, bro.
Come on, dude. He makes you work hard for it.
I think that the Falcons are in man coverage at a top 10 rate in the league. And Tank Dell and Nico Collins are top 6 in grading against man coverage this year. You look at Nico Collins, he has the overall wide receiver grade against man coverage this year, and Tank Dell is 6th. You see the targets per route run rate. Nico Collins is 3rd, and Tank Dell is 18th against man coverage this year. The interesting aspect of that is, do we expect AJ Terrell to shadow Nico Collins? I don't know, to be honest. I haven't worked through all of that, but last weekend he shadowed Calvin Ridley in London. So I don't know how that's going to play out, but I think it's an interesting spot to gamble on with Tank Dell because we kind of know that this offense is extremely concentrated around these two players through the air right now. Like their tight end room is a three tight end concoction of mediocrity right now. Dalton Schultz is not being treated. He's playing like 55-60% snap rates. So we know that CJ Stroud has averaged more than 300 yards passing per game through 4 weeks, which is historic levels of production. And he's thrown 6 touchdowns. 5 of them have gone to Nico Collins or Tank Dell. So there is the potential to maybe stack those 2 guys up with CJ Stroud this week. But I think from a value perspective, a one-off type perspective, Tank Dell is going to be high on my list this week.
No, I love that call right there because I do believe that AJ Terrell shadows Nico Collins because that makes the most sense. The Falcons are running a very similar scheme to what the Saints have done, and that's because they have the Saints defense line coach. And when we see the matchups for like a bigger bodied receiver like Marshawn Lattimore, what do we see him do? He goes and covers Mike Evans every single time they matched up in that way. I think you got to start treating Nico Collins like to that level of player in this offense. And AJ Terrell is the Marshawn Lattimore for Atlanta, where he's going to play sides, but when you have the receiver he wants to take away, he's going to go and take him away. I think Nico Collins will get that respect from the Falcons, and that's going to open up the door for Tank Dell to continue to impress. Dude's playing out wide. I thought he was going to be more of a slot guy. Nope, they're fine with him playing out wide. I absolutely love it. Tank Dell has been one of my favorite guys all offseason. I have a ton of Tank Dell shares. Hyped him up a little too much in my fantasy drafts. So I ended up with Nico Collins 2 rounds later, which feels weird, but good, I guess. I was like, why did you guys pick Tank Dell over Nico Collins? He's like, because I read some of your stuff. But that is all we got for the Cover 5 show. Obviously, this can be streamed back on YouTube. It'll be coming out on Spotify and Apple at the 3013 Podcast Network. Be sure to like, subscribe. Obviously, that helps both of us here over at the 3013. Be sure to check out the Player Prop Happy Hour and everything we've got coming this weekend. Hilo, do you have anything to add before we close the show?
No, man, it's a fun slate. Go attack it.
I cannot wait for this one. This is one of my favorite slates of the year. And last week, I won a college football ticket for that $4,444 contest over on DraftKings. So I have a big sweat coming my way. Hopefully, you'll come back and see that I have won, taken that down, and we can break down that lineup for our lineup review that comes out on Monday. See you guys.